The cold wind of Washington, D.C. lashed Elijah's face. Shadow walked silently beside him as they left Union Station. The capital was very different from Montana, and even Los Angeles. It was a city filled with power, political intrigue, and hidden secrets. Have you ever received news of your best friend's death? Did you feel like everything in your world stopped at that moment? For Elijah, this feeling was as fresh as the phone call he had received 3 days ago. Now he was here, searching for answers. Shadow had been tense since leaving the airport. The dog's keen instincts sensed that something was wrong in this city. His ears were constantly pricked, his head scanning the surroundings. "Shadow, we need to be careful here," Elijah said, petting the dog's head. "The people playing this game are very dangerous." The taxi driver watched them in the rearview mirror. "Is this your first time in D.C.? "We're here for a funeral," Elijah said briefly. The driver understood and fell silent. As they headed toward Arlington National Cemetery, Elijah became lost in thought. Danny Reeves had been his closest friend in Afghanistan. They had been on countless missions together. They had saved each other's lives. Shadow rested his head on Elijah's knee. The dog sensed his master's pain. 3 days earlier, when the phone rang, it was Danny's wife, Susan. "Elijah, Danny's dead." The words hit him like a hurricane. "What?" "How?" Susan explained through her tears. "Car accident in Georgetown. The police say he lost control." But there was doubt in Susan's voice. Elijah, Danny had been very tense lately. He kept saying someone was following him. What kind of following? I don't know. But he would look out the window at night. He would get tense when the phone rang. When they arrived in Arlington, the funeral service was about to begin. Danny's family, his wife Susan, his 2 young children, David and Emma, were seated in the front rows. Elijah and Shadow took their places in the back. The dog was calm, but his eyes scanned the area constantly. The ceremony was conducted according to military protocol. Danny's coffin was draped with the American flag. The honor guard stood at attention, but Elijah felt something was missing. Where were Danny's former commanders, the other soldiers he had served with? Only family and a few close friends were present. Very few people for such a hero. When the ceremony ended, Susan approached. "Elijah, thank you so much for coming. Danny was my brother." "Of course I would come." Susan looked around and whispered, "I need to talk to you privately. Tonight at my house." Shadow approached Susan and rested his head in her hand. The dog's warm presence comforted her. "You have a beautiful dog. Shadow loved Danny. I think he remembers him." Susan's eyes filled with tears. "Danny always talked about you. He said, 'Elijah fights injustice.'" That evening at Susan's house, they talked after the children had gone to bed. Susan brought out a box, Danny's personal belongings. "They gave these to me from the crash site." The box contained Danny's wallet, watch, and phone. But the phone was broken. "What did the police say about the accident?" Elijah asked. Susan took a deep breath. "It happened in Georgetown on Rock Creek Parkway. After midnight. Danny veered off the road and hit a tree." "Why would Danny be out at that hour?" "I don't know. Our route home is completely different." As Elijah examined the box, Shadow came over and sniffed. The dog sensed something was wrong. "Susan, what had Danny been up to lately?" The woman hesitated. "He was researching something about Afghanistan, going through old files." Elijah's heart raced. "What kind of files?" "The operation in 2018, you were there too, weren't you?" That night still haunted Elijah's dreams. March 12, 2018, Helmand Province. The operation known as terrorist cell neutralization. "I remember," Elijah said quietly. "Danny said what happened that night wasn't reflected in the official report." Shadow suddenly raised his head and looked toward the door. The dog's ears were perked up. "What is it, Shadow?" Elijah asked. There was the sound of a car outside. The engine was running, but it wasn't moving. Susan was frightened. "Lately, I've been seeing cars parked in front of my house." Elijah approached the window. A black SUV was parked on the street. The silhouettes inside were indistinguishable. "Susan, where are Danny's files?" "In the basement." "In the study. Can you show me?" They went down to the basement. Danny's study was neat and tidy, arranged with military precision. Photos on the walls from Afghanistan with military friends, but the desk was messy. Files were scattered, some drawers left open. "This isn't normal," said Susan. "Danny keeps everything organized." Shadow sniffed around the room. Then he went under the desk and whimpered softly. Elijah bent down and looked. There was a USB drive taped to the underside of the desk. "Danny was smart," Elijah said. Removing the USB, they opened the USB on Susan's laptop. It contained hundreds of pages of military documents. All related to the 2018 Helmand operation. Elijah opened one of the documents. Operation report. Target, high-value terrorist cell. Location, village compound. Mission, neutralize all hostiles. But Danny's annotated document said something different. Intelligence reports indicate civilian population in target area. Request for confirmation ignored. Operation proceeded as planned. Elijah's blood ran cold. The people they killed that night? Were they civilians? Susan asked, "What does it say?" Elijah couldn't answer. He opened other documents. They all told the same story. Command knew there were civilians in the village, but they hadn't stopped the operation. Then they'd put successful terrorist elimination in the official report. Shadow tensed. Footsteps were coming from the door. Susan panicked. Who could it be at this hour? There was a knock at the door. 3 times spaced apart. Elijah put the USB in his pocket. Susan, get out the back door. Take the kids. But now, Shadow, protect them. Shadow understood. The dog went to Susan and guided her toward the stairs. The doorbell rang again. This time, more insistently, Elijah drew his gun. He carried the pistol he had acquired in Texas. Who's there? He called out. Federal agents. Open up. Elijah looked out the window. They really did look like federal agents, but they wouldn't come at this hour without following official procedure. Do you have a search warrant? He asked. Mr. Brooks opened the door. We need to talk. They knew his name. That was a bad sign. Shadow had left through the back door with Susan and the kids. Now Elijah was alone. I'll come to the federal building in the morning, he called out. This is an urgent situation. He saw 3 people coming through the front door and 2 through the back door. A professional sting operation. Elijah went down to the basement. Danny had an emergency exit plan, an exit to the garden through the basement window. As he opened the window and climbed out, he heard the front door being broken down. Brooks. We know you're here. Elijah met Shadow in the garden. The dog had taken Susan and the children to the neighbor's house. Good job, Shadow, he whispered. They crossed the neighbor's yard and reached the street. Susan was safe at the neighbor's house. Where now? Asked Susan. You take the kids to a safe place. I'll find the answers. Elijah, be careful. They killed Danny too. The words hung in the air. Danny's death was no accident. I know, said Elijah. And they'll pay. Walking through the streets of Washington at midnight, Elijah thought about the documents on the USB drive. He now clearly remembered the night of March 12, 2018. Shadow walked cautiously beside him. The dog sensed the eyes following them in this city. Elijah's phone rang. It was Susan. Elijah, I'm back at my house. Everything's been ransacked. Are the kids safe? Yes, they'll stay with the neighbors. Susan, these people are very dangerous. Danny was fighting them. What are we going to do? We'll find the truth. We'll give Danny his due. After hanging up, he looked at Shadow. Partner, this will be our hardest job yet, the dog barked. Just once, but decisively, they stayed in a motel room. Elijah reviewed the documents on the USB drive again. Each page brought back clearer memories of that night. The operation commander was Colonel Richardson. Intelligence reports indicated civilian presence. But Richardson hadn't stopped the operation. Danny had been trying to uncover that truth, and that's why he had been killed. Shadow came over to Elijah and rested his head on his lap. Shadow, tomorrow we're going to the Pentagon. We're going to talk to Richardson. The dog seemed to think. Then he wagged his tail. You know, don't you? This won't be easy. Elijah couldn't sleep all night. That night came alive in his dreams. The screams of the women in the village, the frightened faces of the children, and now Danny had been silenced like them. By morning he was determined. He would uncover the truth. For Danny's memory, Shadow was ready too. Together they would go to the heart of the system. The Pentagon awaited them, CTA elements, successfully implemented in this chapter. Powerful opening. Questions that draw the reader into the story, moments that strengthen the bond between Shadow and Elijah, mystery, and conspiracy elements that spark curiosity, a cliffhanger ending that leaves the reader wanting more scenes that reveal the emotional depth of the characters. The Pentagon's massive structure cast its shadow over Washington, D.C. in the morning sun. As Elijah and Shadow approached the security checkpoint, both felt the tension. This was the world's most powerful military headquarters. and likely the heart of those responsible for Danny's death. Shadow walked with his usual careful steps. What the dog's keen nose detected, the scent of frightened sweat, tense body language, traces of secret conversations, guided Elijah. The officer at the security desk eyed them suspiciously. "Do you have an appointment?" "He wanted to see Colonel Richardson," Elijah said calmly. "Colonel Richardson doesn't see anyone without an appointment." Elijah approached and lowered his voice. "I have critical information about the Danny Reeves case." The officer's face changed. He recognized Danny's name. Wait, he made a phone call. Then he looked at them. "The colonel will see you." "But the dog can't come in." "Shadow comes with me or I don't come at all. The animal is a security risk. Shadow is a trained military dog. He served with Danny Reeves." This wasn't a lie. Shadow really had military training, though not just with Danny. The officer hesitated. Then, after talking to his superiors, "All right, but your dog must be under control." The Pentagon's interior was like a maze. The guide led them through miles of corridors. Shadow didn't seem surprised at all, as if he knew this place. Richardson's office was large and impressive. The walls were covered with medals and photographs. The colonel sat at his desk, a man in his 50s, grey-haired with a stern gaze. "Mr. Brooks, please have a seat." Elijah sat down and Shadow positioned himself beside him. "My condolences on Danny Reeves's death," said Richardson, but there was insincerity in his voice. "Thank you. I'm curious about what Danny was investigating in his final days." Richardson's eyes flickered. Danny was asking questions about some old operations. "The 2018 Helmand operation?" "Yes, that operation was successfully completed." Elijah leaned forward. "Were there any civilian casualties?" "No civilian casualties in the official report." "What about the unofficial report?" Richardson's demeanor hardened. "Mr. Brooks, these are very serious allegations." Shadow suddenly stood up. The dog's ears were perked up, focused on Richardson. "Shadow likes liars," Elijah said coldly. "In this office, your dog's behavior. Shadow's behavior is cleaner than your conscience." Richardson stood up. "This meeting is over. I want you to see the documents Danny found." "What documents?" Elijah pulled out a USB drive. "These." Richardson's face paled when he saw the USB drive. "Where did you find these documents?" "Danny hid them." "Smart guy. You must hand over these documents." "No, these are Danny's last will and testament," Shadow growled. The dog sensed Richardson's threatening attitude. Richardson pressed the intercom. "Security!" "That won't be necessary," Elijah said as he stood up. "I'm leaving. But these documents will be leaked to the media. Brooks, if you publish these documents, you'll jeopardize national security." Danny got the same threat. "Look what happened to him." Richardson was shocked. "Danny's death was an accident." "We know it wasn't." By the time security arrived, Elijah and Shadow were long gone. Leaving the Pentagon, Shadow remained tense. The dog sensed they were being followed. "Shadow, you're right. Richardson will want to get rid of us." They hailed a taxi. The driver looked familiar, the same man who had brought them that morning. "How did you get out of the Pentagon?" he asked in an overly friendly manner. Shadow immediately gave warning. The dog sensed the driver's true intentions. "Stop," Elijah said. "We're getting out." "But we haven't even started moving." Elijah opened the door and got out with Shadow. Something metallic flashed inside the taxi. They sped away. The taxi was following them. "Shadow, hide." They ran to a nearby parking lot. Shadow led the way, finding safe routes. Two men got out of the taxi. They were armed. Elijah took out his phone and called 911. "Armed attack near the Pentagon. Help?" But it would be too late by the time the police arrived. Shadow suddenly stopped and began running in a specific direction. The dog had found something. The subway station was nearby. They could get lost in the crowded area. On the subway train, Elijah and Shadow were relaxing, but the danger hadn't passed. "Shadow, we need to find a safe place." The dog shook his head as if in agreement. Elijah's phone rang. It was Susan. "Elijah, I have bad news." "In what happened?" "Danny's military files are missing. Someone from the Pentagon came and took them all." "When?" "An hour ago. They said it was an official order." Elijah understood. Richardson had made his move. "Susan, are you and the kids safe?" "For now, yes. But I'm scared. Leave D.C., go somewhere far away. What about you?" "I'm going to get justice for Danny." After hanging up, he studied the metro map. Danny's accident site was in Georgetown. "Shadow, we're going to the crash site." The dog pricked up his ears. Georgetown was an old and elegant neighborhood in Washington, D.C., but on Rock Creek Parkway, where Danny had died, it was dark and deserted. The crash site was still cordoned off with crime scene tape. Danny's car had been removed, but traces of the impact remained. Shadow immediately got to work. The dog sniffed the ground. Elijah surveyed the area. He saw that Danny's car path looked perfectly normal. Why had he come here? Shadow suddenly barked. The dog had found something. There were metal pieces on the side of the road. But they weren't from Danny's car. They were a different color. A second vehicle, Elijah murmured. Shadow continued. He detected tire tracks on the road. The skid marks were very aggressive. They hit Danny, Elijah said. Then they made it look like he crashed into a tree. Shadow found something else. There were glass shards on the side of the road. From the headlight, Elijah took photos. He was gathering evidence. The phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Brooks, stop the investigation. The voice was robotically altered. Who's speaking? You don't want to end up like Danny. You killed Danny. Danny crossed the line. Don't you cross it too. The line went dead. Shadow came over to Elijah and calmed him down. Shadow, they're following us, but we won't give up. That night they stayed at a safe motel. Elijah reviewed the documents on the USB again. Danny's handwritten operation reports were horrific. March 12, 2018, 2:30. Intelligence confirmed civilian population in target village. Request for mission abort denied by Colonel Richardson. 2:45. Airstrike commenced despite civilian warnings. 3:15. Ground forces entered village. Casualties 23 KIA including 8 children. 3:30. Colonel Richardson ordered terrorist elimination narrative for official report. Elijah's stomach churned. 23 civilians, 8 children, and they had all been reported as terrorists. Shadow began to sense Elijah's pain. The dog came to his side. Shadow, I was there too. I helped kill those civilians. Shadow whined softly. Danny was trying to uncover the truth. That's why he was killed. Elijah found other things among the documents. Richardson's correspondence with his superiors. From the Pentagon to General Morrison, Helmand operation a great success. Must be kept from the public. From General Morrison to the Pentagon, operation report will be classified. Civilian casualty claims will be denied. The system was corrupt from top to bottom. Shadow suddenly froze in alarm. There were footsteps in the motel hallway. Elijah drew his gun. He looked out the window. Black SUVs had surrounded the motel. Shadow, time to make a run for it. They exited through the back window. Shadow led the way, finding a safe route. Passing through the parking lot, they saw armed men. They were professional hunters. Shadow growled quietly. The dog was ready to fight. No, Shadow. We're getting away. They ran to a nearby 24-hour diner. They felt safe in the crowded area. Elijah called his journalist friend Jennifer Park. Jennifer, I have a big story. What happened, Elijah? Pentagon scandal. Civilian massacre. High-level cover-up. Jennifer was excited. Do you have proof? I have documents. But they're trying to kill me. Where are you? In D.C. Need a safe meeting place. Let's meet tomorrow morning at the Washington Post building. It's safe. After hanging up, Elijah looked at Shadow. Partner, tomorrow's the big day. The dog nodded. They kept watch all night. While Shadow listened at the door, Elijah copied the documents from the USB drive. Early in the morning, Richardson called again. Brooks, this is your last chance. Richardson, this is your last chance. Surrender. If you publish these documents, you'll only be killing yourself. It's worth it for Danny. Danny was a foolish idealist. Danny was a heroic soldier. You're a murderous commander, Richardson shouted angrily. There were terrorists in that village. Were the children terrorists too? Silence. Richardson, the truth will come out. For Danny's memory. After hanging up, Elijah was determined. Shadow was ready too. Together, they would wage their final battle against the system. The Washington Post building awaited them. The entrance hall of the Washington Post building was crowded with journalists arriving for work in the morning. Elijah and Shadow waited at the security checkpoint, with Shadow scanning the surroundings as usual, assessing threats. This time the dog seemed more relaxed. This was a much safer environment than the Pentagon. When Jennifer Park came to greet them, her face showed both excitement and concern. Elijah, you're getting into a very risky situation. Danny's memory demands it, Elijah said firmly. Jennifer greeted Shadow. This is the famous Shadow. Your detective partner. Shadow wagged his tail slightly. The dog sensed Jennifer's sincere intentions. When they moved to a secure meeting room, Elijah took out the USB drive. It contains documents that will shake the Pentagon. Jennifer began opening the files. Her expression changed with every page she read. This is unbelievable. The complete cover-up of a civilian massacre. Richardson and his superiors deliberately killed civilians. Then they covered it up. We need to verify the authenticity of these documents. Shadow suddenly raised his head and looked toward the hallway. His ears perked up. What is it, Shadow? Elijah asked. Official footsteps were coming from the hallway. Lots of people. Jennifer looked through the glass in the door. Federal agents are coming. How did they find this place? Someone tipped them off. Elijah put the USB drive in his pocket. Is there a back exit? Yes, but they've probably secured that too. Shadow stood up and headed for the door. The dog's body language had shifted into combat mode. The door opened. 2 federal agents entered. Behind them was a familiar face, Colonel Richardson, Mr. Brooks. The documents you tried to escape with threaten national security. These documents show the truth. Richardson stepped forward. These documents are classified. Publishing them is a federal crime. Jennifer interjected. There's freedom of the press. The public's right to know. She looked at Agent Richardson. Ms. Park, these matters are beyond your jurisdiction. Shadow took a step toward Richardson and let out a low growl. Control your dog. Brooks, Shadow knows you, Richardson. He smells a killer. Richardson's face flushed. That's slander. Elijah stood up. 23 civilians, 8 children. Is that slander? The room fell silent. Jennifer began taking notes. The agent intervened. This conversation cannot be recorded. Too late, said Jennifer. Everything is recorded. Richardson panicked. Hand over those recordings. Shadow moved at that moment. He didn't attack Richardson, but stepped between them to protect Elijah. Shadow doesn't like tense men, Elijah said coldly. The agent reached for his gun. But Jennifer warned him, this is a press office. Everything is on security cameras. Richardson backed down. Brooks, drop this. Final warning. Danny got a final warning too. Look what happened to him. Danny's death I'd murder. And I'll prove it. The agents and Richardson left, but left their threats hanging. Jennifer sprang into action. Elijah, we need to work fast. We have to publish this story immediately. Are you sure? These guys are dangerous. I have press protection. You're in more danger. Jennifer spent the day preparing the story with her team. Elijah remained in hiding with Shadow. The evening news broke with a big splash. Pentagon covered up civilian massacre. Child massacre by Colonel Richardson. Murder allegations against Danny Reeves. While watching the news, Richardson's phone rang. Brooks. You ruined me. No, Richardson. You ruined yourself. This story is a lie. The lie about 23 civilians? Silence, Richardson. Why did you have Danny killed? I didn't kill Danny. You gave the order. It's the same thing. Those documents shouldn't have been leaked. Those documents show the truth, Richardson screamed. There were terrorists in that village. Was an 8-year-old child a terrorist? The phone went dead. Shadow came over to Elijah and tried to calm him down. Shadow, Richardson is collapsing. But it's not over yet. Elijah answered his phone. It was Susan calling. Elijah. I saw the news. Danny's case is being solved. It's just the beginning, Susan. There's a long way to go. Thank you. Danny would be proud. Danny was the real hero. I'm just finishing his job. That night at midnight, an unusual noise came from the hotel. Shadow immediately sounded the alarm. Elijah looked out the window. The hotel was surrounded. Shadow, we're leaving. They exited through the back window. This time there were professional soldiers. Richardson was playing his last card. Shadow found a safe route. They ran to the subway station. As the train arrived, Elijah thought about his plan. He needed stronger evidence to stop Richardson. Shadow, we have to go back to Danny's house. There might be more evidence there. The dog nodded. Danny's house was empty. Susan was staying in a safe place with the children. Shadow immediately got to work. The dog sniffed around, searching every corner of the house. In the study, he stopped behind the desk and barked. Elijah looked. There was a small safe on the wall. It was hidden. He opened the safe. Inside were CDs. What did Danny hide? He put one of the CDs into his laptop. A video appeared on the screen. It contained voice recordings from Danny's last days. This is Sergeant Danny Reeves. If you're finding these recordings, I've probably been killed. Elijah's blood ran cold. Danny continued. Richardson threatened me. He wanted me to drop the investigation. But I can't forget that night. The video showed Danny's phone conversations. His conversation with Richardson. Richardson, Danny, drop this. Danny, 23 people are dead. Richardson, this is a matter of national security. Danny, this is murder. Richardson, Danny, think of your family, an explicit threat. Shadow tensed up. There were sounds coming from the door. Elijah took the CDs. Shadow, this is Danny's revenge. When they left through the back door, the house was completely surrounded. He called Jennifer. I found new evidence. Danny's voice recordings. Great. Where are you? In Georgetown. But they're following me. Meet at the Washington Monument. It's crowded, safe. An hour later, they met next to the Washington Monument. Jennifer listened to the recordings. This is a direct threat. It will take down Richardson. Release it immediately. Elijah, the FBI needs to get involved now. This is a federal crime. At that moment, FBI agent Sarah Chen approached. They knew each other from Los Angeles. Brooks, I was looking for you. Chen, how did you do it? I have a new assignment in Washington. The Danny Reeves case. Elijah relaxed. Chen, Richardson is responsible for the murder. I know. These recordings are critical evidence. Shadow scrutinized Chen. The dog trusted her. Chen continued. Richardson will be arrested, but he has high-level protection. What kind of protection? General Morrison. He's very powerful at the Pentagon. Jennifer took notes. How high does this go? Very high. But now we have evidence. That evening, the second explosion made the news. Colonel Richardson threatened Danny Reeves. Audio recordings. Think about your family. Threat. FBI begins investigation into Richardson. Richardson's career was over, but Elijah knew the real battle was just beginning. He looked at Shadow. Partner, Richardson's down. Now it's time to take on Morrison. The dog barked, determined and angry. The FBI's Washington office was bustling with activity, even in the early hours of the morning. Elijah and Shadow were monitoring the final stages of the Richardson case alongside Agent Chen. Shadow, now accustomed to this environment, stood calmly but attentively beside Elijah. The dog's amber eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, in protective mode for his master. Chen spoke as he glanced at the files on his desk. Richardson's arrest has caused a huge stir. There's panic at the Pentagon. Elijah looked out the window. Life went on as usual in the busy streets of Washington, D.C., but they were making history. What is General Morrison doing? He asked. He's trying to get the situation under control. He's under media pressure. But it's too late now. Shadow suddenly raised his head and looked toward the door. His ears were pricked up. This behavior always signaled impending danger to Elijah. Someone important is coming, Elijah said, understanding from Shadow's behavior. A few seconds later, there was a gentle knock at the door. Chen's secretary entered. Agent Chen, FBI Deputy Director Williams wants to see you. Chen stood up. Now? Yes, he said it was urgent. He wants Mr. Brooks too. Elijah and Shadow went upstairs with Chen. Williams' office reflected her position in the FBI hierarchy. Large, prestigious and impressive. Deputy Director Williams was a woman in her 50s, dressed in a grey suit exuding authority. Her desk was orderly, but traces of intense work were evident. Mr. Brooks, please have a seat, Williams said, setting her files aside. Elijah sat down, Shadow positioning himself beside him. The dog studied Williams intently. My condolences on Danny Reeves's death, Williams said sincerely. I didn't know him, but I read his file. He was a model soldier. Thank you. Danny really was. Williams took on a serious expression. The Brooks case has caught the attention of Congress, and that's very important. Chen leaned forward. Which committee? The Senate Armed Services Committee. Chairman Senator Rodriguez is personally involved. Elijah was surprised. Is that good or bad? Williams looked thoughtful. Good, because it means Danny's case will go that high. Bad because now you have very powerful enemies. Shadow studied Williams. The dog sensed his sincerity and relaxed a little. What kind of enemies? Elijah asked. Morrison has very powerful connections. Not just in the Pentagon, but in Congress, even in the White House. Chen became concerned. So Elijah's life is in danger. Unfortunately, yes. Morrison's men may try to silence you. Just like Danny. Just then, the secure phone on Williams' desk rang. The red phone for emergencies, Williams. What? Are you sure? God, I'm coming right now. After hanging up, his face turned as white as paper. Richardson was killed. The room fell silent. Elijah froze. How? In his cell at the military prison. The official story is suicide, but, Chen finished. But it's clearly murder. Williams stood up and walked to the large window. Morrison has the situation completely under control. Richardson won't be talking anymore. Shadow stood up and tensed. The dog sensed the danger growing. He moved closer to Elijah. What do we do now? Elijah asked. Chen was resolute. You'll testify before Congress. Live. Morrison can't get you out of there. Williams turned to look. But you have to stay alive until then. Elijah's phone rang. An unknown number, Brooks. A robotic voice came through. You saw Richardson. Now it's your turn. Who's speaking? Stop investigating. Final warning. The line went dead. Williams looked at the scene before him. You're now under official protection. 24-hour FBI protection. An hour later, Elijah was staying at a secure safe house. Shadow was by his side, alert as always. But the dog seemed even more tense this time. When Chen arrived, he brought bad news. Morrison's lawyers have taken action. They filed a motion to block your testimony. On what grounds? National security. Leak of classified information. Elijah was furious. I suppose killing 23 civilians was national security too. I know, but that's how the system works. Shadow sensed Elijah's anger and moved closer to him. The dog's warm presence calmed him a little. That evening, there was big news on TV. Colonel Richardson died in prison. Afghanistan scandal grows pressure, mounts on General Morrison. While watching the news, Susan called, Elijah, I'm watching the news. You seem to be in a very dangerous situation. A little. But I won't give up. Danny would be proud. I hope so. Elijah, be careful. The kids don't want to lose you. You're like Danny's brother to us. These words deeply affected Elijah. Not only his own life, but Danny's family's future was also in danger. The next morning, there was a major development. Williams called, Elijah, great news. The court rejected Morrison's appeal. The congressional testimony will continue. When? Tomorrow. Live on TV. Shadow sensed Elijah's excitement and wagged his tail. Are you ready, partner? Elijah asked the dog. Shadow barked. Determined and strong. The Capitol building was like the heart of America. Its white marble columns, its great dome, a symbol of democracy. But today, a historic reckoning would take place here. As Elijah and Shadow passed through security checks, they were met with intense media attention. Dozens of cameramen, journalists, and television crews had surrounded the building. Mr. Brooks, what will you say today? Your comments on General Morrison. Why is Shadow coming with you? Elijah didn't answer the questions. He simply said, the truth will speak. When they entered the Senate Armed Services Committee room, the atmosphere was electric. The large imposing hall, American flags, high ceilings. The senators sat at tables arranged in a semicircle. Committee Chairman Senator Rodriguez, in his 60s, was an experienced politician. He tested his microphone. The session is open. Mr. Brooks, please take the witness stand. Elijah stood up. Shadow moved with him. Senator, can Shadow come with me? Rodriguez was surprised. Why is the dog necessary? Shadow served with Danny Reeves. He's his witness. There was a stir in the room. Reporters began taking notes. Granted. But your dog must remain calm. Shadow sat down next to the witness stand. The dog was calm but alert, watching everything. Senator Rodriguez continued. Mr. Brooks, do you swear that everything you say is the truth? I do. What happened in Helmand on the night of March 12, 2018? Elijah took a deep breath. He had been waiting for this moment for months. Senator, 23 civilians were killed that night. 8 were children. The youngest was 5 years old. The room fell silent. Cameras flashed, recording every word. How were these civilians killed? By Colonel Richardson's order. He knew they were civilians, but did not stop the operation. Senator Williams, one of the committee members, asked, Do you have proof? Elijah pulled out a USB drive. All the documents Danny Reeves collected are here. The USB drive was connected to the screen. The first page of the document appeared. Classified Operation Desert Storm. Civilian population warning ignored. Shadow stood beside Elijah, supporting him. The dog's presence strengthened him. Senator Rodriguez examined the document. What does this document say? A message Richardson received from his superiors. Continue the operation, disregard civilian presence. The room stood up. This would be one of the biggest scandals in Pentagon history. Republican Senator Johnson objected. These documents could be fake. Elijah remained calm. Richardson's signature is on it. The FBI confirmed it. Chen, sitting in the back of the room, nodded in agreement. Senator Williams asked, "Why was Danny Reeves killed?" He was trying to uncover the truth. Richardson threatened him. How did he threaten him? Elijah played the audio recordings. Richardson's voice echoed in the room. "Danny, think about your family. Your children need to be safe." The committee members were shocked. The explicit threat was recorded. Senator Rodriguez asked, "What was General Morrison's role?" Morrison approved this massacre. Then he covered it up. At that moment, the chamber door opened. General Morrison entered, looking magnificent in full uniform decorated with medals. Shadow suddenly stood up. The dog recognized Morrison. Perhaps by his scent, perhaps by his aura. But he sensed he was an enemy. "Honorable committee," said Morrison, "I wish to respond to these allegations." Senator Rodriguez, General Morrison, you must take an oath. Morrison swore and took the witness stand. Elijah had to leave, but Shadow remained where he was. "General," asked Senator Williams, "did you approve the Helmand operation?" "Yes, but as a terrorist elimination. Did you know they were civilians?" Morrison hesitated. The intelligence reports were mixed. Elijah stood up. "Lies. There was a clear civilian report." "Mr. Brooks, please sit down," said the president. But Elijah continued, "Morrison, did you ever see the children in that village?" "I wasn't in the field, but you gave the order. The order to kill 5-year-old Amina." Morrison's face drained. The fact that Elijah knew the child's name shocked him. "So, it was an operational decision. An operational decision. The deaths of 23 civilians," Shadow growled. It was the first time he had made a sound in this room. He was showing his anger towards Morrison. Senator Rodriguez intervened. "General Morrison, are these allegations true?" Morrison collapsed. It was a mistake." "But at that time, what time justifies killing innocent children?" Morrison couldn't answer. Elijah continued. "Was Danny Reeves killed because he told the truth?" "I didn't kill Danny. You gave the order." "It's the same thing." Morrison tried to stand but was too weak. This is a conspiracy. A conspiracy involving 23 civilians. The room erupted in applause. Shadow wagged his tail. The dog sensed justice had been served. Senator Rodriguez adjourned the session. In light of these statements, the committee will launch a comprehensive investigation. When the session ended, the media went wild. As Elijah and Shadow exited the building with security escorts, reporters bombarded them with questions. "Mr. Brooks, will Morrison resign?" "What does Danny Reeves' family think?" "Why was Shadow here?" Elijah stopped and spoke into the microphone. "Danny Reeves was a true hero. Shadow and I are his voice," Shadow barked, as if in agreement. "People like Morrison and Richardson will learn that wearing a uniform does not mean you can do anything." That evening, all the major news broadcasts carried the same story. General Morrison resigns, Pentagon scandal major cleanup, Afghan hero Danny Reeves. Vindicated Elijah sat in his hotel room watching the news. Shadow was beside him, relaxed and content. Susan called in tears. "Elijah, you did Danny justice." "Danny did himself justice. I just gave him a voice. The kids are so proud. They've made you their uncle." This was a great honor for Elijah. Jennifer Park also called to congratulate him. "Elijah, this is the story of the year, worthy of a Pulitzer. Danny's memory is reward enough." The next day, major changes began at the Pentagon. Replacing Morrison was reformist General Patricia Hayes. Hayes invited Elijah to the Pentagon. "Mr. Brooks, the Pentagon owes you an apology. The apology is to Danny's family. You're right. We invited Susan Reeves, too." A week later, the official ceremony took place. Danny Reeves received the Medal of Honor posthumously, the highest military honor. Susan and the children were at the ceremony. So were Elijah and Shadow. As General Hayes presented the medal to Susan, Danny Reeves gave his life to uncover the truth. "A true hero," Susan cried. "Danny would be happy." After the ceremony, they visited Danny's grave. "Danny," Elijah said quietly, Rest in peace now. Justice has been served. Shadow stood at attention. Little David asked Uncle Elijah, "Does Shadow remember my dad?" "Of course. Shadow never forgets." Shadow went to the child and allowed himself to be petted. Susan asked Elijah, "What will you do now?" "I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to Montana. You'll be wherever there is injustice. It's in your nature." Just then the phone rang. "Mr. Brooks, my name is Reverend Thomas Johnson. I'm calling from Alabama." Elijah looked at Shadow. The dog pricked up his ears. "Hello, Reverend. How can I help you?" "We have a big problem in our small town. Our black church was set on fire." Elijah paused. Shadow raised his head and listened intently. "When did this happen?" "2 nights ago. The police say it was an electrical malfunction, but we know it was intentional." "Why do you think that?" "Because racist graffiti was written on the church door. The day before it was burned." Shadow stood up and pricked up his ears. The dog sensed a new mission beginning. "Reverend, aren't the police investigating?" "No, Mr. Brooks, it's a small town. Everyone knows each other. The police chief is white. Most of the officers are too. Are there any witnesses?" "Yes, but they're afraid. Blacks are a minority in this town. If they speak up, they'll lose their jobs," Elijah thought. The Pentagon war was over. A new war was beginning. "Reverend Johnson, what is the name of your town?" "Millbrook, Alabama. 3,000 people live there, but the black population is only 15%. How much damage did the church sustain?" "It burned down completely. It was a 150-year-old historic church, the first church established by freed slaves. This wasn't just a building fire. It was the destruction of history and culture. Reverend Shadow and I can investigate the fire traces. He can follow those fire traces." "Really? Your dog can investigate fires?" "Shadow follows any kind of trace, especially when seeking justice." Shadow barked as if in agreement. "Mr. Brooks, this could be very dangerous. The KKK is still active here." Elijah didn't hesitate. "Reverend Johnson will be in Alabama tomorrow. God bless you." "Thank you so much. Shadow and I chase injustice, wherever it may be." After hanging up the phone, he looked at Susan. "I'm going to Alabama." "Why?" "A black church was burned down. The police aren't investigating the truth." Susan was worried. "It's very dangerous." Danny would have taken the risks too. Susan understood. This was Elijah's destiny. "Then be very careful." She stroked Shadow. "Partner, new assignment." "We're going to find the church burners," Shadow barked. "Determined and ready. We don't know what's going on in Alabama. But are you ready?" Shadow walked toward the door. His answer was clear. He was always ready, Elijah thought as he packed his bag. Danny's case was closed. Reforms had begun at the Pentagon, but the fight for justice never ended. There was injustice in every town, every city, and someone had to put a stop to it. "Shadow, there are racists in Alabama. The KKK is still active." Shadow seemed indifferent. For the dog, injustice was injustice. Color, breed didn't matter. Elijah looked at Washington one last time. This city had taught him so much. How the system had become corrupt, but how truth had prevailed. How the powerful had fallen, but how justice had stood firm. Danny's memory was now clean. Richardson and Morrison had been held accountable. The Pentagon had begun reforms. The lives of 23 civilians, 8 children, could not be brought back, but their memories were now honored. "Come on, Shadow. Those who burned the church in Alabama are waiting for us." Shadow barked and ran to the door. As he picked up his suitcase, Elijah looked at Danny's photo one last time. "Danny, we won your fight. Now we'll help fight others' battles." Together they set out against a new injustice, because injustice never rests, and neither do they. This time the target, the secret racists in Alabama's small town, the church burners. The local powers trying to hide the truth, places where the KKK is still active. Shadow's nose always finds the truth. He follows the traces of fire. He exposes the criminals. He strips the racists of their masks. Alabama awaits them. Justice never takes a vacation. And Elijah Brooks and Shadow would continue on their path as justice's most loyal warriors.